Hey everybody, it's Lynsey. I am a little late getting started this week. I had thought that I might be a little on the tired and hungover side this morning because yesterday was the big Pride celebration here in Montana. But I'm actually just tired and not hungover because I didn't end up going out. I haven't been sleeping well, and last night I finally got a good solid 8 hours of sleep, but now I am not really sure what's going on because I slept in really late to get that 8 hours. So here I am. I am gonna read for you from my book. It might just be a little disjointed this week. I'm not as prepared as I wish I was. So, hi world. This week I've got some lemon water and some tea. I actually am operating on no caffeine as of now. That used to be a goal of mine. I actually quit coffee about 2.5 years ago. For a while there, I didn't have any caffeine, but I slowly found myself tripping back down the hole toward caffeine. Now I basically drink some black tea in the morning, but it doesn't give me the jitters the way that coffee used to. So hi world, I'm Lynsey G. I am a writer, editor, and publisher. I am the author of this book, which is called Watching Porn. It is a memoir about my time as an adult entertainment journalist, writing about all of the goings-on in the smut industry. However, it's actually not so much of a memoir as it is a informational book about the adult entertainment industry. So I basically wrote about the things that I know about the porn industry based on the experiences that I had. So I knew that if I had tried to write an actually fully rounded informational text about the porn industry, it would have ended up being, you know, like this thick and several volumes long, and I wasn't really able to rally the resources that I needed to make that happen. So instead, I wrote a shorter volume. What is it, 320 pages long, about my personal experiences and the things that I have had cause to learn about, you know, in a more personal way. So it's a fun read. I like to think it's a beach read, summer readers. It's available in trade paperback, like this guy, and a slightly older edition, which is in, hardcover. It's also available online as an ebook, I believe on Kindle and probably Nook. I am not certain about all of the different platforms there. And I have big news coming up about a new way to access my book, but I'm not allowed to say anything about it yet because nothing has been signed and put into stone. But there's probably another way to read my book coming up, so it's good. Very exciting. So I am here to read Chapter 19 of the book. So this is my bookmark. That is how far we've gotten doing these live readings. I believe that there are only 21 chapters, so I think that there's only going to be a few after this. Let me double check. Yep. Only 3 chapters to go, folks. So come one, come all. We're going to read. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about a piece of news that came across my radar this week. I'm going to find a short article on it so that I can be certain of what I'm talking about. Okay, so I don't know if anyone out there has heard about this. There have been headlines about it for a while, but I happen to comb corners of the internet that not everybody is on as often as I am. So I don't know if anybody else out there knows about this. But first, oh, Jail Draco, you're so funny. Putting an extra T on the butt. Okay, so here's the thing that has been trying to happen for the last 4 years. Okay, I believe it was in the lead up to an election in 2015 in the UK. The Tory party said that they wanted to block access to pornography on the internet for anyone who's under 18 years old. They believe that young people having access to online porn is detrimental, and so they wanted to stop that from happening by putting age verification blocks on every website that leads to pornography, that has pornography on it, for all computers and devices in the UK. So basically, anyone accessing or trying to access porn in the UK would have to provide some sort of ID, positive identification that they are who they say they are and that they are 18 years or older in order to move past like the front page of the website and in. So right now we have all of those, most porn websites have a front page that says, are you over 18? Yes or no. And that's about it. So basically it's like a, if you are under 18 and you didn't mean to come here and you were searching for something else, you can press the no button and be redirected. But, you know, pretty much everybody just ignores those and clicks yes, right? Because you don't have to prove that you're over 18. JL says, we always have extra tea on the ready. Oh, hey, you made a tea joke that was also about butts. It's like you really know me or something. Also, I'd like to point out the size of this cup of tea. It's actually pretty weak. I didn't brew it very strong, but look. It's as big as my face. Okay. Where was I? Age verification, right. So I don't remember the legislative process here, but through some means or another, this idea of blocking kids from seeing porn online became law in the UK. And it caused this huge scramble because basically the UK has a pretty strong porn industry over there. There's actually, you know, a pretty decent amount of porn that's being made, but a lot of it is being made by small companies, you know, kind of mom and pop shops, if you will. And they were very worried because they would have to buy and install and use very expensive software that really didn't exist on the scale that they needed it to for their websites. And, you know, most porn companies these days are really, they don't have that kind of money to just throw around. And it also threw up all of these concerns in the public and with the porn community also, that if people have to be providing their IDs, like, and getting verification that those IDs are valid on the internet, that means that whatever software company or whoever the website is, like however this works, somebody has to be keeping track of those IDs, because nobody's going to want to have to re-enter all of their information every time they go back to their favorite porn website, right? So that means that what they're going to want is for this website to keep track of who they are. But that means that there is somebody looking at all that data, or at least caching all of that data, keeping it somewhere, which basically means that it would be extremely vulnerable. It would be like the Ashley Madison leak a few years ago, where this, you know, cheater website got hacked, and the names of all these people who were shopping around on a website for cheaters got released. But this could be much more specific. If people who are looking at pornography on the internet are having their personal data kept somewhere in like some big database, that's really, really vulnerable, right? So people were very worried about that. And then they were talking about, okay, well, who's going to provide this software? Is it like every man for himself? Every website is going to have to come up with their own way of doing things? Or should we have basically like one age verification system that every website can use? Certainly the latter option, the one big company to provide all of the software, would be the cheaper option. So the company that got tapped to do it is MindGeek. MindGeek is a Canadian company that basically owns the porn industry right now. They are the owners of P0rnhub, RedTube, YouPorn, Xhamster, Brazzers, Mofos. I know there's another really big one that I'm not remembering right now. Bang Bus, I think. And basically, I am going to read a chapter right now that is all about MindGeek and how they have gutted the porn industry by coming in and basically monopolizing it. So the idea that the people that everybody was scared of, who are going to be overseeing this age verification process and keeping track of everybody's identification information and what porn sites they're going to, is also going to be this company that already controls everything about porn on the internet. People did not like that. So the upshot of all of this is that the age verification law, which, by the way, I should mention, is not only being applied to companies that make porn in the UK, it is going to apply to any porn website that you can access from the UK. So every porn site in the world that wants people in the UK to watch their stuff is going to have to put these age verification blocks in place for people in the UK. And the UK, the statistics that we have are skewed because they apply mainly to the English-speaking world, but P0rnhub, again, that's MindGeek, does a lot of data diving and analysis, and they have, for the past, 5, 6, 7 years, at the end of every year, they release a huge amount of statistics about who's watching what around the world, and it's much more zoomed out. Like, it's not this person is watching this stuff. It's like these people in this country like this and blah blah blah. And the UK for that entire time has been the second most porn watching nation in the world. So behind the US, of course. So basically that is a huge share of the porn market is in the UK, and people were just really concerned. So originally this age verification block was proposed in 2015. It became a law and has been doing a very slow roll toward actual implementation over the past 2-ish years. Originally it was scheduled to go into effect in April of last year. Then there was some delay of some kind, and it was pushed back until July 15th of this year. So everybody was like getting ready for this, steeling themselves. I haven't read all of the news about it because there's been a lot, but a lot of people were fighting it really hard, but it looked like it was about to go into effect. And then last week, I'm going to forget his title. Let me find it here. The UK Culture Secretary, Jeremy Wright, told the House of Commons on June 20th that somebody forgot to tell the European Commission about this new law that was going into effect. Like, they were supposed to have done it a long time ago when they were in the process of actually, like, implementing the law and, like, figuring out what it looked like. Somebody had to tell the European Commission, and they just didn't. So the UK was like, whoops. And so he said, in autumn last year, we laid 3 instruments before the House of Commons. One of them sets out standards that companies need to comply with. This should have been notified to the European Commission, and it was not. This will result in a delay in the region of 6 months. So in the region of 6 months is very indefinite. Some places are speculating that this might be the death rattle of this law. But Mr. Wright is very clear that no, the policy is not changing because it's very important. He said, age verification needs to happen, and in the interest of and needs of children, it must. So that's what's going on in the UK right now. Nobody really knows if this age verification thing is ever going to happen, but I do know that the companies who were making software and selling it to people and thought that they were basically going to earn back their investments in inventing it in the next month are really pissed off right now. But I wanted to talk about this little piece of porn news because it's very germane to the topic that I'm going to be reading about today, which is MindGeek and the corporatization of the experience of viewing porn on the internet. Over the past 10 years, basically since P0rnhub became a thing, which was in 2007, so over the past 12 years, the entire porn industry has changed drastically. It was already changing a lot because of pirated online content, but in 2007, P0rnhub became a thing. P0rnhub was the first tube site owned by MindGeek to be launched, as far as I'm aware. I may be wrong, but if so, I will tell myself that I'm wrong in this chapter. And it changed the way that people view porn. It changed the world's relationship with porn, and it changed the actual porn industry irrevocably. It has been entirely altered. And now they are possibly going to be overseeing age verification. The UK law, if it ever goes into effect, and if this age verification system ever happens, is being watched by a lot of other companies who want to replicate what the UK does if it's successful. Now, I don't have a problem with the idea of blocking young people from watching porn. Young people are not supposed to watch porn. Porn is not made for young people. Porn is made for adults over the age of 18 who legally can watch it. Pornographers aren't making porn because they want kids to see it. That's not the game. That's not the idea. However, these blocks do have their dangers, as I just said, and one of those dangers comes from this massive company that has utterly gutted the adult entertainment industry in the past decade, being in control of the information of people who want to watch porn. So, with that all said, let's read. I usually do a little bit of preparation work before I start reading, where I cut out little bits of chapters so that it doesn't get too long. I did not have a chance to do that with this one, and it is a rather long chapter, so please bear with me. I may try to skip over some parts as I'm reading if they just get a little bit too dry. Here we go, folks. Chapter 19 is called Losing It to the Tubes. We got back to New York on the 23rd of May. This was in 2011. And I am talking about my journey back from Miami, where I had had a wild party weekend and lost my voice. We got back to New York on the 23rd of May, and on the 25th, I had lunch with the management team of Apex Art, a gallery in Tribeca. It was a non-traditional space that did not sell works for profit, but rather invited thinkers to curate shows based around themes. The gallery's director had been considering doing a show about pornography for years, and had read my McSweeney's column. He was interested in my point of view and wanted to discuss the idea of me curating a show for the gallery. I was ecstatic. Stepping into the middle space between the porn world and the not-porn populace had attracted curious looks at first, but now I was luring people out to stand there with me and make connections of their own. Here was my opportunity to invite people into the middle with me in a physical setting, in public. I had now come full circle, from providing customer service at a high-end art gallery uptown to curating my own show downtown. Setting to work on the art show was an exhilarating but challenging experience. How could I make my show inviting but also pack a punch? Porn was nothing new to the art world, the director cautioned me. Presenting it in a way that invited discussion rather than blasé sensationalism was the challenge. But we didn't want to move too far away from the shock angle either. Sex does sell, after all. I was cautioned not to be so professorial that the subject matter became uninteresting, but neither to revel too much in the salaciousness of the material. The trick was to find the middle ground, as always. To place myself firmly in the center, and from there to show what I saw. The validity of my perspective on pornography really doesn't come from my closeness to it, but rather from the distance I have maintained from both the industry and consumers. How could I show the world the things I saw from my tenuous position between porn and public? The answer came to me almost immediately when Apex Art first contacted me, but it took months of back and forth before I felt confident in it, since it didn't involve me curating so much as creating an entire art show. I would interview people about their personal relationships with pornography. Performers, directors, producers, critics, consumers. The interviews would then be cut up and arranged into short documentary films, which would be shown at the gallery in the spring of 2012. As I began to prepare for the show, I received an email from my TV and book agents informing me that they were dumping me. The literary agent said that my columns, essays, and sample chapters just weren't translating into a book-length work the way that she had hoped. The TV agent said that she didn't see any future in working with me as a client for other projects, but that she would continue to service my TV deal since her agency had also represented the production company that I was working with, which was a detail that they had not informed me about previously, and I was pretty mad about that. Although the TV deal had been signed and my meager option money had been paid, the team was no closer to finding a co-writer for my pilot than they had been on day one, and the idea was clearly beginning to go stale for everybody involved. I wasn't surprised. After my initial whirlwind of new girl adulation and a few post-signing months of bliss, I had been hearing less and less from the producers and agents who had lauded me as the next big thing in Hollywood. I was writing more than ever, for more places than ever, but my new stuff wasn't getting as much of a response as the column at McSweeney's had. It made sense. I had been a pervy outlier in the McSweeney's world, as I now was in the Tribeca art world, but amidst the clamor of online publishing, I wasn't making much noise. I had tried pitching to larger publications, but had gotten no bites, so I continued to dedicate my energy to Whack magazine, my own magazine, rather than pursuing prominent bylines. My agents, with clearer understandings of writers' career trajectories, had noticed what I was up to, and they dumped me. I'm sure it's bitter grapes that makes me wonder how much of their hesitation in more actively representing me came from a fear of judgment from being aligned with pornography. It felt as if it was okay for me to write about pornography in a literary magazine with one eyebrow constantly raised. But when I got into the details of blowjob techniques and porn films for my less exalted publications, look out! Nobody wanted to read about the implications of fellatio upon the cultural concept of gender relations. They wanted to read about the time I went home with Kenny Stiles after a party at a huge nightclub in Miami, but I didn't have that story to tell. At any rate, I didn't have much time for reflecting on my bruised ego. I, too, had read the writing on the wall and had summarily started an internship at a major publishing company, which, within 3 weeks, turned into a full-time job for the company's premier genre paperback imprint. Mainstream publishing turned out to be an interesting place to find myself. After watching the adult entertainment industry battle death by technology for years, I was familiar with the symptoms I saw in publishing: dropping profits, resistance to change, polarization, and conglomeration. Just as the porn industry had seen its formerly astronomical profit margin shrink as content was pirated, publishing had been in a freefall as bookstores closed, ebook sales skyrocketed, and other forms of media pushed books toward the bottom of the pile of consumer preference. And yet, in this climate of drastic technological shifts, publishers were still hesitant to make changes to catch up. When I entered the publishing industry, ebooks were an afterthought for my imprint, which still operated primarily in romances, murder mysteries, and thrillers, the exact genres that had been selling well as ebooks. But nobody had time in their panic over the changing publishing landscape to devote to prioritizing ebooks, even as brick-and-mortar sales opportunities continued to shrivel and digital publishing flourished. Does this sound familiar? In light of these changes, the publishing industry was shifting in opposite directions. On one end, independent publishers were popping up and taking advantage of technology that enabled them to reduce the time, cost, and overhead needed to publish books. Self-publishing was also booming, and mainstream publishers were buying fewer books to keep their bottom lines satisfied. This DIY mentality mirrored that of small independent pornographers, many of them feminist and or queer, who had taken the opportunities that cheaper, higher quality tech offered them. Meanwhile, publishing behemoths serviced the other end of the spectrum, consolidating as sales continued to slow and the media shrieked over the death of print. After about a year and a half after I started working in publishing, two of the biggest publishers in the world, Penguin and Random House, announced that they would merge, thus combining workforces and taking over an enormous share of the world's publishing market in an effort to combat the threat of Amazon usurping the book-buying public, the means of distribution, and even the means of production. In a striking parallel, porn was witnessing the beginnings of its own darker, slicker conglomerate behemoth, a corporate machine that was growing every day, gorging itself on profits from the very piracy that was breaking down the rest of the industry. Dun 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 dun! Quick tea break. Here we get into the good stuff, folks. The entity that is now called MindGeek was started in 2003 in Montreal, where college friends, I don't know how to pronounce this, so here we go, where college friends Wasim Youssef and Stefan Manos teamed up with a friend from the competitive foosball circuit, which is apparently a thing, Matt Kieser, to start some porn websites. When they did well, the group created Mansef, a holding company for their expanding enterprises, including a high-end pay site called Brazzers, featuring content they contracted from producers in America. Brazzers specialized in big, often augmented boobs, an aesthetic that had started to wane before Brazzers revived it, and high production values. I had reviewed Brazzers films for both the print magazine and Whack, and had praised their quality, though I was never a fan of the plastic, blonde, tan-lined look that they pushed. The Brazzers family of companies expanded quickly, with, excuse me for saying this, with Jugfuckers, Racks and Blacks, and more appearing in quick succession. A second network of sites popped up soon after, called Mofos, which specialized in less manufactured-looking performers. Soon I was reviewing films from Teens Like It Big, which had a more natural aesthetic and tended toward more extreme sex. But even as Brazzers was growing in size and credibility in the porn industry, its co-founder, Youssef, was branching out in a different direction: tube sites. Internet porn piracy takes many forms, but by far the most popular tactic, and therefore the most draining on the industry, is tube sites. Taking their moniker from YouTube and modeling themselves after their namesake, porn tube sites allow users to upload pornographic content for free and to watch it to their heart's content, also for free. This means that anyone with an internet connection can post amateur videos of themselves having sex, which is legal so long as everyone involved consents, and even if they don't in some places, or scenes that they have recorded from porn films, which is totally, completely, and utterly illegal and far more frequent than the former. Amateur porn on tube sites often stars professionals pretending not to be. Tube sites display whatever their users upload unless a Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA, takedown request is filed by the copyright holder, in which case it will be taken down in due course. But pirates act fast, and there are so many of them that most porn companies that try to counter them fight losing battles with diminishing resources, given that people are now able to watch their movies for free. So, when Youssef purchased the domain P0rnhub.com in 2007 and added the tube site to the Brazzers family under the name Interhub, a separate company owned by the same people, he was getting into bed with porn's biggest enemy while continuing to produce porn via Brazzers. Even as MindGeek, the company, was paying porn crews, directors, producers, and performers to create new content for sale, that content was being pirated and uploaded to a growing family of free tube sites that MindGeek also owned, and its advertising revenue was being funneled into Interhub. So MindGeek and Interhub, two parts of the same company. The MindGeek Interhub team had a simple strategy: make money on traditional porn production and porn piracy, keep it quiet, and laugh all the way to the bank. As consumers flocked to the tube sites for their free and nearly limitless content, profits were dropping across the industry, except for over at MindGeek, where business was still shockingly good. Rumors spread, and the Brazzers team, who had never been on a porn set but who were quickly becoming porn tycoons, were treated with suspicion. In 2009, the Secret Service people, seized over $6 million from two MindGeek bank accounts for suspicious activity. At the time, in short order, MindGeek and Interhub's assets were sold to Fabian Thielmann. I'm not sure if it's Tillman or Thielman, but it's spelled like Thielmann, who is a German programming whiz, and he overnight became a porn overlord. At the time of purchase, he already owned several porn sites, including Xtube, and when he acquired MindGeek and Interhub's operations, he renamed the conglomerate Manwin in 2010. I love the name Manwin. It makes me think of Sloppy Joe sandwiches. Like, it's such a bad name. Manwin. Okay, anyway. I heard a few grumbles about the newly dubbed Manwin by the time it went on an acquisition spree, adding small companies to its roster by the bucketful. By July 2013, the company had acquired tube sites YouPorn, GayTube, SexTube, TrannyTube, and RedTube, effectively cornering the market in porn tube sites since it already owned several of the biggest. By that same date, Manwin had also acquired Twisties, Digital Playground, and Reality Kings, some of the premier porn site networks in the world. It additionally controlled the online operations of industry titan Wicked Pictures and the online and television operations of Playboy. In under a decade, Manwin had become the primary player in the adult industry, and it showed no signs of slowing down. According to many in the industry, particularly outspoken anti-piracy advocate Stoya, Manwin's modus operandi is to allow porn piracy to undercut performers' profits to such a degree that producers' profits rather, to such a degree that these producers are then willing to sell their companies for peanuts. Once small companies have been purchased, they are allowed to continue creating content, but their profits are constantly sucked away by the tube sites, which still feed into the larger conglomerate. In effect, Manwin is making money no matter what, and the hundreds of people working for the company's content production side simply have to make do with less, since the people paying them are also the ones stealing from them. As Nate Glass of the anti-piracy company Takedown Piracy told me in 2016, it would be as if 20th Century Fox owned the Pirate Bay, which I think has been taken down since then, but it's still a good comparison. Or, in the publishing world, as if Amazon owned Penguin Random House and used bookstores. In 2013, Manwin had become public enemy #1 in adult entertainment, but since so many were still on its payroll, there was little to be done about it. Thilman sold his stake in Manwin to Ferris Anton and David Tassio, who had been with the company for years, and they renamed it MindGeek, which I also believe is a terrible company name, but, whatever works. These two now quietly oversee a gigantic share of the porn industry, a share so big that most in the business, along with plenty of journalists, have called it a monopoly. But the day that governments around the world start to care about monopolies in smut is still far off, and in the meantime, the holdouts still remaining independent have continued to seek out new avenues for money-making that can either cut MindGeek out of the equation or make peace with the looming big brother of porn. By the time I hit AVN in 2011, the effects of tube sites were already being felt, although Manwin, which hadn't been renamed MindGeek just yet, hadn't reached its zenith. The AVN Expo in 2011 was much smaller than the year before. People were reporting drops in profits of up to 80%. At the awards ceremony, an anti-piracy PSA starring prominent industry faces was played to raucous applause, and a number of acceptance speeches included pleas for viewers to pay for porn instead of watching it on the tubes. These entreaties didn't go unheard. The AVN Awards were being broadcast on Spike TV, which, ironically, was owned by, you guessed it, Manwin. Since then, the trend has continued and even escalated. To my dismay, in 2012, the Adult Entertainment Expo was even smaller than the year before, and it had been moved to the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, a smaller venue well off the Las Vegas Strip. By the last quarter of 2014, production in Porn Valley was down 75% from 2008. The pornography industry author Shira Tarrant estimated in 2016 that at least $2 billion was being lost to online piracy, largely via tube sites, every year. MindGeek is now rumored to be one of the top 3 consumers of bandwidth in the world, with much of that mouthful going directly to its tube sites, of which it currently owns 8 of the top 10 worldwide. MindGeek has reported that its sites get over 100 million views every day, with the vast majority of these views coming from the tube sites, and a tiny percentage transitioning into paid subscriptions to its many pay sites, or click-throughs to advertisers. Tube sites have become so ubiquitous that many studios upload trailers and clips as promotional material in the hopes that even 1 out of 1,000 viewers might click the link to their pay site and make a purchase. Studios that have managed to avoid the MindGeek Leviathan must try to outmaneuver it while still eking out a profit in a market that just keeps shrinking. Given that most production companies own many sites that feed into one another, ownership in the industry is quite opaque, which means that whether industry workers want to steer clear of MindGeek or not, it's difficult to make a living without working for the monopoly. Some of the performers I've spoken to actually can't tell me whether they've shot scenes for a MindGeek company because they don't actually know. Others refuse to even speculate. They choose not to talk about MindGeek at all, lest their words get around and they find themselves blacklisted by the biggest bully on the playground. There is resistance from the grassroots, however. A startup called Takedown Piracy entered the scene in the spring of 2009 when Nate Glass, a salesperson for an adult production company in LA, decided to do something. I kind of took it as a personal challenge, and I have a total hero complex. I saw people I know getting laid off, and I saw us downsizing, he told me, and he thought, this is not justice, this is not right. So he set about developing digital fingerprinting technology that would identify copyrighted content by scanning tube sites and pinpointing unique markers for each studio. His company generates and sends DMCA takedown notices to the site illegally hosting its clients' content. They started in 2009, and as of the time that I wrote this, Takedown Piracy had removed over 50 million copyrighted videos from free websites on behalf of their clients, and had worked out deals with a number of tube sites to block those clients' pirated content in the future. Takedown Piracy has made a noticeable dent in the mountains of pirated porn in the world, and Glass is hopeful that the dent will grow. And for better or worse, The tube site model may soon change. Oh, this is old news. So, well, I guess I'll just read it because I'm about to tell you about it anyway. At the end of 2015, Pornhub introduced Pornhub Premium, a Netflix-style $9.99 per month subscription service that entitled members to faster, higher quality streams of all the content available for free on the rest of the site, as well as exclusive full-length films produced by Pornhub's partner studios. As of February 2016, the premium package also offered Pornhub original content. It launched with Full Holes, a Full House porn parody that frankly looked god-awful to this porn journalist. So yeah, Pornhub Premium is still a thing, but it definitely did not take off in a big way, so probably most people have not even heard of it. But if you're really into porn and you really want like the highest quality porn, if you pay Pornhub this fee, you have access to better quality stuff that ostensibly is not pirated, in addition to the normal pirated stuff. So you can do that. The tube site subscription model has yet to prove itself, but it's another double-edged sword for the rest of the adult industry. On the one hand, it offers a pay-for-your-porn, Netflix-style model from the biggest tube site of them all, which could be a boon in that it's reintroducing customers to the idea that pornography is a product with monetary value. And for studios who partner with Pornhub to shelter their content behind the paywall, it could help to keep piracy at bay. However, so far there have been no plans announced to kick any of that $9.99 per month back to the industry in a meaningful way, which leaves the adult industry in more or less the same position that they are in now. The monopoly isn't all bad, of course. MindGeek's flagship tube site, Pornhub, is so profitable and so widely recognized as the biggest porn site in the world that it has taken the opportunity to give back to its users in quirky, sometimes delightful ways. In 2012, Pornhub launched a month-long Save the Boobs campaign by donating 1 cent to breast cancer research for every 30 big tit or small tit videos its users streamed. Shortly thereafter, the company launched the Pornhub Cares initiative, which has since made charitable donations to reforestation efforts, which were donations based on views of the big dicks category. Get it? Wood? Domestic violence, via a clothing line co-founded with domestic violence survivor Christy Mack, and whale conservation, 1 cent per every 2,000 videos streamed. They've even started a $25,000 scholarship awarded to the winner of an essay contest every year. In early 2017, Pornhub launched the Pornhub Sexual Wellness Center, a sex education site that brings together sex experts and doctors to school the masses on issues ranging from basic sexual anatomy to gender issues to sexually transmitted diseases and more. The move was roundly lauded by porn fans and mainstream media as a responsible answer to the fact that pornography serves as sex education for many of the tube site's viewers. Pornhub's vice president, Corey Price, told Refinery29, "As a leading provider of adult entertainment, we thought it important that we also offer a platform on which carefully sourced information about all aspects of sexuality be made available to our viewers." But adult industry insiders were skeptical. One of the primary reasons that so many people are learning about sexuality from porn in the first place is because they can watch it easily and for free, illegally, on Pornhub, where the vast majority of the fare available was filmed with the intention of entertaining, not educating, in exchange for legal tender. But now that it's available for free, it's serving both purposes. And rather than cracking down on copyright violations in an effort to get pornographers paid, Pornhub has made itself a one-stop shop for education and smut, theoretically eliminating the need to look elsewhere, say pay sites or VOD sites, for sexual material online. Pornhub has also leveraged its popularity into brilliant campaigns, or ad campaigns, that inhabit a solid middle ground straddling salaciousness, titillation, humor, and wry winks to the public, acknowledging that porn is a secret that we all share. In other words, MindGeek has dropped its consumer-facing brand directly into the space I myself have been trying to occupy for years by bringing people together to talk about porn in a real way. With its 81 million hits a day in traffic, Pornhub is in an incredible position to collect and process information that the world has been wondering about for years, and it recognized its potential, launching P0rnhub Insights in 2013. Looking at every imaginable metric for porn consumption, the company has examined porn viewership during various sporting events and holidays, the correlations between income and porn watching habits, political divisions and porn use, marijuana and porn searches, and more. The results of these data crunching and processing efforts are fascinating, to say the least. Here's just a nibble. Lesbian is far and away the most searched for word on the site, and Kim Kardashian is one of the most popular porn stars, even though she's not a porn star. This could be all of this could be of immense value for pornographers, but more than that, Pornhub is demystifying the dirty habit that we almost all share. By giving us feedback on our habits and laying them out for all the world to see, and doing it in a friendly, safe-for-work way, they're clobbering the stigma surrounding porn use. For instance, one of their biggest reveals has been that easily a quarter of their registered users are female, and then breaking down what these female viewers are watching. The results are riveting. Did you know, for instance, that women are 122% more likely to search for gangbang porn than men, at least on Pornhub? Interesting, right? But it must be stated that, just as algorithms on Facebook and Google cultivate the consumer taste that they cater to, so too is MindGeek steering its viewers. All this data collection on the part of Pornhub is likely part of a larger effort to direct users to content that they'll enjoy, much like Amazon's "You Might Also Enjoy" function that introduces shoppers to similar products. Those suggestions don't come up arbitrarily. The site is tracking your interests and comparing them with those of millions of other users. The end result is, as Shira Tarrant put it, you're being spoon-fed a limited range of pornography. Online porn users don't necessarily realize that their porn use patterns are largely molded by corporations. With this wisdom in mind, one starts to question the prevalence of, say, teens as a search term, or MILFs. Are we really all thirsty for these two age groups, or have we entered into a feedback loop that sells us these categories as popular, so we must want to watch them so they continue to get made? It's a question that I couldn't begin to answer, but it makes me look a tad askance at the information that Pornhub puts out. Puts out. Still, it's interesting to watch the porn monopoly's prize website, and possibly the industry's biggest enemy, going to such lengths to be a good citizen. And skeptical though I may be, I can't help also being impressed. But the cynic in me must ask, wouldn't it be nice to see them spending as much time and energy on giving back to the community upon whose backs all of this data and money is generated? While MindGeek is making us feel a little better about watching porn, most of us are still getting it for free, from MindGeek. For the industry, that means that there is still less to go around, and there's less work and less money. Studios are still failing, rates are still falling, and the public doesn't much care because they're getting all the porn they want free of charge, as well as a winking pat on the back from Pornhub Cares. In December 2016, superstar adult performer Nikki Benz tweeted that she had been assaulted on a Brazzers set by the director, Tony T., who had choked her during a scene that she said wasn't supposed to be a rape scene, but in which she had been pushed well past her limits. She had called for a cut multiple times, she said, but filming had continued. Her 850,000 Twitter followers, who call themselves the Benz Mafia, were outraged and began immediately calling for justice, denouncing Brazzers and Tony T., and pulling their memberships from the company that had employed Mrs. Benz, or Ms. Benz, rather, as a brand ambassador and contract star. Brazzers backpedaled, publicly siding with Ms. Benz while also denying culpability. Tony T., you see, was an independent third party, contracted to film a scene according to his own whims, which would be purchased by Brazzers if it met their requirements. Brazzers reported that they would not purchase the scene, nor would they ever work with Tony T. again. Yet the statements rang hollow. Nikki Benz was one of the biggest stars in the industry, with one of the largest fan bases, and she was unwilling to be mollified. The company was so big, they maintained, that they clearly didn't care about the well-being of the people at the bottom, the performers themselves. Nikki Benz, known for shooting high-end, mostly vanilla scenes, should never have been paired with a director like Tony T., whose career in porn started as an aggressively dominant male performer for hardcore gonzo companies. He had earned himself a reputation for aggression on set. Whatever he was planning to film with Nikki Benz, Brazzers should have seen the writing on the wall well before they booked their biggest contract star to work on one of his sets. As performer Jen Padova told me shortly after the incident, it was Brazzers' responsibility. There's a contract there. You take care of that person who is representing your company. There's a lot on the line. You're the largest and most successful company in the industry and have been for years, and you'd think you'd be a little careful with something like that. Tony T. and Ramon Nomar, oh my god, the director and performer who Ms. Benz called out, have filed a defamation lawsuit for unspecified damages. Tony T. has categorically denied the truth of the allegations, even showing the raw footage of the scene in question to a small group of industry insiders in an attempt to clear his name. Still, many performers have come out publicly in defense of Ms. Benz, and to add their stories to hers. Brazzers, it seems, has a history of hiring producers who mistreat female talent on set, then silencing the complaints by withholding pay and pressuring performers to stay quiet. A huge company's word, the thinking seems to go, will be valued above that of a mere porn actor. And they may be right. The case has gone suspiciously quiet since Benz made her first announcement. And in the meantime, performers and independent producers have been finding workarounds to stay free of MindGeek's tightening fist. The result is an intriguing post-apocalyptic porn landscape. Since 2010 or so, I've been witnessing some truly genius changes in porn. Just as Amazon's dominance and large publisher conglomeration has left a space for indie publishers to proliferate, the corporate titan of porn has encouraged small producers and performers to think creatively and find more ways to make money. Kink.com is an excellent example of independent success. Started in 1997 as Cybernet Entertainment and renamed Kink.com in 2006, the company is dedicated to, as its mission statement attests, demystifying and celebrating alternative sexualities by providing the most ethical and authentic kinky adult entertainment. With its focus on the wide world of kink, ranging from simulated water torture to fucking machines to standard bondage and domination and everything in between, Kink has managed to do well by filming specialized content that MindGeek doesn't have a particular interest in owning. MindGeek's production efforts don't make much in the way of kinky content, and P0rnhub isn't very interested in fringe material, which it offloads instead onto MindGeek's smaller tube sites. With its ever-evolving focus on the ethical treatment of models and other workers, Kink has set itself up as a progressive force in the industry, aiming to expand and improve at every juncture. The company also pays well. Slightly less on average than a standard mainstream company might, but more than the smaller companies can afford. Many independent studios have taken a hint from Kink.com's success and specialized in fringe content that doesn't fall under MindGeek's purview. Back in 2010, industry veteran Debbie Diamond, who had just returned to porn after a 15-year hiatus, told me, "To stay in the game, you must be creative and serve up fresh, niche content." And that has only gotten more true with the continued role of piracy. At most industry gatherings I have attended in recent years, new faces I've struck up conversations with have often told me that they do fetish work, ranging from balloon popping to farting to foot fetishes, for themselves, from home, with extremely low overhead costs. With hand jobs, pegging, foot fetish, that stuff, there's less constraints, so you can shoot more of it in a day. It's easier on your body, and there's 0.000 chance of anybody passing an STI onto anyone, says Lance Hart of kinky porn and payment company pervout.com. Actually, since then, Lance has become sort of a rising star. He's getting a lot of work from a lot of different companies and does his own company stuff as well. Companies like his are too small for MindGeek to notice, and they shoot content that MindGeek doesn't particularly want anyway. And because the tube sites host relatively few fringe offerings, the increasingly kinky public finds content where it can, very often paying small producers for it in the process. It's worth noting that this doesn't mean that fringe content doesn't get pirated or put on tube sites, merely that it happens a little less frequently than mainstream content. Specialization at a small scale has proven itself a more sure thing for performers than shooting old-school porn scenes in the new millennium, and porn has morphed to meet the needs of its fans as well as the wallets of its smaller producers. As Danny Wilde told Forbes in 2017, from his perspective as a retired performer, he can see, quote, the reality that performing is no longer a way for most people to make a lot of money. Even performers who frequent the mainstream LA porn studio circuit have branched out into alternative revenue streams for the extra cash and the control it can give them over their careers. Performer websites, for instance, began to revolutionize the way that adult actors made money as soon as the World Wide Web began displaying photos. Nina Hartley told me in a 2010 interview that performers had more leverage and power in that they can learn how to run their own websites and keep more of their money for themselves than they had in the past. And since then, that trend has deepened. Almost every performer has their own website today, as well as a phalanx of social media profiles, giving them more power over their image and finances. With the ability to produce and display their own images, models can monetize their own content and make money on their own terms. But websites are just the tip of the porn iceberg. In a 2016 study, Heather Berg, a professor of women's studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara, found that of the 80 performers she interviewed, nearly all were making money outside of the pre-recorded porn scenes. For all but the most popular performers, and then usually only for a short time, she wrote, there are simply not enough film performance gigs to sustain an income. Anything from phone calls to used lingerie to Amazon wish lists can be sources of income for porn stars these days. There are a lot of girls who do webcamming and make a lot of money, Nikki Darling said to me in 2016. There is starting to be a lot of multiple revenue streams or multiple hustles. I think 10 years ago you could be a full-time porn star and you could really make money and a good living. But with the rise of the internet and piracy and how easy it is to get content for free, there are now all these alternative ways that are widening your net. A few weeks before I spoke to her at a panel at the XBiz conference, 4 out of the 7 models affirmed that they made 50% or more of their money from sources other than filming traditional porn scenes. As sex scenes have grown ever more passé, consumers have developed a taste for interactive, custom-made content that connects them directly to performers. As such, webcam shows that put models into one-on-one or one-on-a-few contact with fans have exploded in popularity. At the Adult Entertainment Expo in 2016, Christopher Ruth of the Fine Ass Marketing Agency told me candidly that he estimated easily 50% of the industry's profits now came from camming. There are a number of big webcamming companies that operate on a variety of brilliant payment models, but the long and short of the camming industry is that models, sometimes porn performers, sometimes not, do sexy things on camera for a group of onlookers, and the company hosting or producing the cam show takes a cut of their profits. Cam shows are prized for their interactivity, with viewers able to type messages to the model during her show, to take her into a private room for a more intimate experience, and to suggest ideas for what the model should do next, or just say hi. The camming industry has maintained its edge by keeping up technologically with the trappings that can help their industry, notably with the finest in teledildonics, long-distance smart sex toys, and every new iteration of high-definition filming and viewing technology, including virtual reality. But webcamming isn't the only game in town for adult models to make money between filming porn scenes. Clips are another performer favorite. With videos ranging from a few minutes to full-length porn-style sex scenes, most clips are produced by models themselves for their fans, either solo or with partners, in any configuration or niche they want. The videos are loaded onto clip stores, either on one of the many large clip websites that host content and take cuts of the payments, or directly on a performer's website. Nikki Darling told me, the amateur clip type of thing is kind of where, from my vantage point, I see a lot of porn going. For the performer, it's an opportunity to make money and take control over their labor. And for the interested consumer, it's worth noting that purchasing clips from the performers that make them is often relatively inexpensive. Clip stores are also a good source for independent income, but Nikki says that they're not all that simple. I think it can be beneficial, and it does widen your net of income, she said. You're picking up different skills. You're learning how to edit, or you're speaking to people who know how to edit. You're figuring out how to upload and shoot. It's entrepreneurial in a lot of ways because you're making yourself a business and figuring out what's best for the business and what your market is. Moving behind the camera is an excellent source of not only cash, but agency in the adult entertainment industry. In today's MindGeek-dominated landscape, entrepreneurship may be the best way forward for performers like Nikki, whose careers are diversifying every day. From creating custom videos and photos for fans, to sending those videos and photos over mobile apps like Snapchat for pay, to monetizing social media streams using new apps like Follow Plus, to paid private Skype video calls, to text message sex via companies like Dreamlover, the possibilities abound for a savvy performer to make a living without shooting for MindGeek at all. Live interactive possibilities also abound, like feature dancing at gentlemen's clubs, educational speaking engagements that are opening up to sex workers, public appearances at nightclubs and elsewhere, and of course, one-on-one sessions with clients. For adult entertainers of the kinky persuasion, work as a professional dominatrix can be extremely profitable. For those with less specialized tastes, short stints at legalized brothels in Nevada brings extra attention and cash to the brothels and the performers. And though it's still a little taboo to speak about, private escorting gigs are, and have long been, standard practice for many. So there is a long section here about how I learned about escorting in the adult entertainment industry. I think that I'm gonna cut it because I've already been on here for almost an hour and it's kind of a long section, but also because it involves me talking about an extremely famous person and a sort of fight that happened between my company and this extremely famous person. I'm not sure that I want to read about it. So I'm going to see if I can just read the conclusion here. Oh, it ends on a good note. So, okay, so basically I'll give you the short version. It was, in late 2011, and the Exotica convention was coming back around, and my company, or my magazine, wanted to throw a party in Manhattan. We invited a whole bunch of porn stars through the amazing efforts of a dominatrix that we knew locally. We were able to reserve this awesome club. I don't remember where it was. Meatpacking District, maybe? I don't remember. But we got this awesome club to agree to host our party, and they were basically just taking all the profits from the party. So we weren't making any money, but we did have this awesome venue. We were going to have a red carpet, and we invited all these porn stars to just, come in for like an hour or two after the show ended, after the Exotica Expo ended for the evening. Come get your picture taken, and we invited all the press in New York City to come, interview people on the red carpet or whatever, and then, come into the club, stay, dance, have a drink, whatever, and then go wherever you need to go after that, right? So we sent out a press release to every press outlet in New York, and we said very specifically in the press release that this was not an Exotica sponsored event. This was just an event that was happening alongside of Exotica, and it was a way for the performers who were at Exotica to come into the city and get some press in the city as opposed to in New Jersey, which is where the expo was held. But I think it was Perez Hilton, if anybody remembers Perez Hilton, ran the press release, but in the title said that it was an Exotica party, meaning that we were like officially affiliated with Exotica, which was not true. So we wrote to them, we tried every way that we could to get in touch with them and be like, this is not an Exotica party, you are going to get us in trouble, because they're going to think that we are trying to advertise it that way, and we're not. But they didn't listen to us, they didn't change the headline, and then a whole bunch of other places picked up the same headline. So nobody at Exotica seemed to care. Like, we didn't hear anything from the actual Exotica Expo about it, but a very famous performer who we had been good friends with, we had interviewed several times, and who had been like planning to come to our party, I think, I don't really remember, she got crazy mad, like super mad, called me at work, and started screaming at me about how this was so disrespectful to Exotica and how people were going to get the wrong idea, and if we were taking performers into the city to party all night, they were going to like miss their signings the next day, and like we were just the worst shit in the world. And I was like, whoa, 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 like we are not trying to do any of that. What the press is saying is not our fault. Like, and she was like, well, me. So anyway, I thought that she was just mad, right? But then all of these people who had confirmed that they were going to come to our party and show up on our red carpet started dropping out. And they all were affiliated with one modeling agency who since then has been majorly disgraced, because it turned out later they were running what I wouldn't necessarily call an escorting service. I would call it more of a prostitution, and that's a very, very fine line, and actually maybe there's no difference. This is a whole thing, but the guy who was running that company was basically, I would call him a pimp and mean it in like the worst way. There's been a huge expose recently on a major media website about this guy. His name, well, I'm not going to go into specifics here, but it turns out, I have no problem personally with private, consensual, safe sex work. Like, I think that it should be decriminalized. I think that people should have the right to do what the fuck they want and be able to like have legal protections and get like healthcare and stuff. I absolutely 100% believe that. But there are ways of doing it that are exploitative and ways that are not. And so it turns out that this guy who ran this modeling agency was running an escorting service via the porn stars that he was working with, but that a lot of his methods were like extremely underhanded. Like he was like keeping them in a model house where they had to follow all of these ridiculous rules and like basically couldn't leave, and then he would like put them all in a car and like take them to a party and be like, oh yeah, you're just there to look pretty for the rich guys, but then like, oh whoops, you're supposed to have sex with them, but I never said that. Like all kinds of like really, really nasty shit. So anyway, he's a bad person, and I've known that for a long time now, but he continued to be in the industry and like working well for quite a while, even though everybody hated him. Don't understand how that happens. But the woman who called me on the phone and was super, super mad that we were being unprofessional by saying that we were affiliated with Exotica and all of these things that she was mad at me about, that's not why she was mad. She was mad because she was making money on these performers doing escorting work after the show ended for the night. So like she had all of these people that she was getting escorting gigs for, and she didn't want them to be at our party instead of making money for her. At least like that's never been 100% confirmed, but I have had enough unconfirmed instances of people telling me that that's what was going on, and then realizing how closely this person worked with this guy who was clearly a pimp. So anyway, here's the thing. The basic takeaway is that a lot of people who do porn performing also do escorting work, and that is like fine, cool, like especially, you know, if you're into it and that's something that is fun for you and you're not getting as much pay or as much filming opportunities as you would like, you know, freaking by all means make that money, you know. I think that's awesome. But there are, like I said, there are ways of doing it that are exploitative to the people doing the sex work, and then there are ways of doing it that are like consensual and great and help everybody involved. And so that was sort of my introduction to the fact that escorting was a big part of the adult entertainment industry, because before that I had had a lot of like, people would like mention that people did escorting work, but nobody would actually own up to doing it themselves. They would always be like, oh yeah, I heard that so-and-so does that. And I was like, so, like, is that a problem? And so I had never really like encountered it in a real way. But then actually over the years since then, there's been a lot more opening up about that. There's been a lot more talk about, you know, the fact that people should have a right to do consensual sex work, and that the fact that it's illegal is ridiculous, and the fact that it's illegal is making it more dangerous for people because they don't have the same access to legal protections and healthcare. You know, like I've been saying since the beginning of this book, the more that you shove something into the shadows and make it impossible to talk about, the more room you're creating for bad stuff to happen to people, because they don't have any recourse when something bad does happen. And that creates this idea in everybody's mind that this thing is off limits and therefore I can fuck around with it as much as I want to because nobody can say shit. And that's not okay. So over the past, you know, almost decade really, there's been like a slow roll of people who do sex work that is currently illegal in the United States starting to talk about it, like online, starting to talk about it in public and be like, this is ridiculous, we deserve the same rights as everybody else. We're not doing this because we're being trafficked, and if we were able to advocate for our own rights, it would actually end up kicking a lot of the people who are taking advantage of people out of the industry. If people who do sex work were able to be public about it and organize themselves in a better and more straightforward way, it would make it a lot easier for the industry to police itself and get the bad people out. But right now, they don't have access to any kind of help. You know, it's not possible for them to get any sort of funding for themselves. It's not possible for them to unionize. It's not possible for them to even, you know, have the protection of the police in a real way. Most of the time, if a sex worker tries to go to the police because somebody assaulted them, they end up in prison. You know, it's not a good system. Anyway, I could go on and on and on and on about sex workers' rights and the importance of decriminalization here in the U.S., but that's not the point. The point was just to say that the larger point of this chapter was to say that the MindGeek conglomerate has affected the industry in ways that are almost, like, they go so deep. It's almost impossible to wrap your brain around all of them. And one of the things about that is that it has drained the industry of so much income that a lot of people who, you know, maybe would have been very happy to be just porn stars are now, you know, facing choices about how to move forward and make money, enough money to get by, which may include, you know, webcamming, may include clips and custom videos that they make specifically on request for the people who want them, and it may include escorting work, which again is fine. If that's a thing that you want to do, great. But if it's not a thing that you want to do and you just wanted to be a porn star but you can't make enough money at it because there's not enough work to go around, that's not great, right? There's actually a really, really interesting podcast that I wish I had been the one to do, called The Butterfly Effect. It was done by John Ronson, who is a British writer, and I really, really strongly recommend it. There aren't very many episodes. I can't remember how many. I think there's 6. There's definitely no more than 10 episodes of it. It was like a one-time event. He did a whole arc that really looked at the effects of the availability of free streaming porn on everybody. And it went really deep. I really, really strongly recommend it because it gets into the good and the bad. Because like I was saying before, you know, the sort of normalization of porn watching that has happened because porn has become so readily available to so many of us has been, I think, positive in a lot of ways. More people are more willing to talk about pornography as a real thing now. And I believe that probably the normalization of porn, talking about porn, reporting on porn, came from the fact that it's just so ubiquitous now. Like, everybody partakes, or almost everybody partakes in some way, and therefore it's become normalized to talk about. And I think that's healthy for us as human beings. It's a way of normalizing our sexuality and our sexual practices. But it has become so normalized that porn is free that the people who are trying to make it are losing out, because you can't continue to make a product if nobody's getting paid for it. And the fact that porn production and porn piracy are basically being controlled by the same entity, which now also is behind age verification technology that may be being implemented around the globe if things go the way that certain people want it to, just gives this one entity so much control and so much power. As I was actually reading about how, you know, P0rnhub and its other sites don't pay quite as much attention to niche content and fetish content. You know, they're not quite as interested in acquiring small companies that make those things, etc. It really made me reflect a little bit on how much these giant companies that are all owned by the same mega company are really controlling what people are understanding about their own sexual tastes and desires. And if there's one thing that I have learned, which I'll get into in the next 2 chapters, it's that human sexuality is vast and diverse, and everybody is different, and that's wonderful. It's great. But there is sort of a danger in everybody getting their sexual entertainment from the same place, because whether that place wants to or not, whether the algorithms are set up this way or not, there is a normalization of certain things. There is a sort of subconscious education that goes on about, you know, what sex is, what sex looks like, and especially for young people who are seeing it, you know, before they've really probably seen anything else that's overtly, explicitly sexual, there is definitely a, there's a way that it can sort of impede the development of sexual tastes, limit them, and I don't know, sort of limit the imagination. So I don't know, that's a whole other topic, and it's definitely something that has been explored elsewhere, but it's definitely worth thinking about. You know, if you go to Pornhub and you start clicking around and you think, wow, look at all of this, there's so much here, I can find anything. That's probably true. You probably can find anything, but there are certain things that are clearly valued more than others, that are sought after more than others, that are viewed more than others. And, you know, humans are social animals. We have a very, very strong tendency to want to do what's normal and to want to be normal. So when we get into territory where some of our most private desires are being fit into an algorithm in a way that's visible, you know, I mean, who here is less likely to click on a video that's been watched 5 times than a video that's been watched 5 million times? You know, you see the 5 million, you think, oh man, there must be something great going on there. And if the video that's been viewed 5 times really does it for you, is there a bit of shame there that the thing that people only watched 5 times is different? It's just something to think about while you are, you know, viewing your explicit material. You know, as long as everybody who is involved in whatever you're watching or whatever you're doing is consenting and excited about it and into exploring with you, there shouldn't be shame. As long as they're all adults, as long as they are all adults and humans, or I guess a robot. I don't know, I have weird feelings about sex robots. But you know, do you. Don't do what Pornhub says is normal if that's not what you like. You know, there's lots of ways to sex. And if you can't find what you like on Pornhub, hey, even if you can find what you like on Pornhub, consider instead figuring out who's making it and then finding them on their clip store, their webcam, their private website, their customs website, their social media, wherever they are, and paying them for the content that you like. It helps. It helps a lot more than you think. There are a lot of companies who have worked out deals with Pornhub and other tube sites where they're it depends on the company and it depends on the tube site, so I can't say exactly like how everything works, but a lot of companies now use tube sites as sort of advertisements where you get a small clip from a longer video and then you click through if you want to buy the longer video. So there's a lot of ways that the tube sites and smaller production companies are actually teaming up. But I wouldn't say that those team-ups are as mutually beneficial as they should be. It's more a decision that a lot of companies have had to make out of desperation because the tube sites have impacted their ability to make money so deeply that the only way that they can continue to make any money is if they, you know, make a deal with the devil. It's not great because niche content, content that, you know, looks different from your standard content only can continue to be made if the people who make it can continue to pay their bills. So yeah, even if you are on Pornhub or Xtube or what Xhamster or any of these other sites, even if you are on there, and I'm not going to judge you too harshly if you are, because it is just, it's what we do now, and you see something that you really like, you see a certain style of filming that you think is awesome, you see a performer that is just totally doing it for you, you see, you know, a sex act that you're really interested in, try to find out who those people are. If it's a company that has partnered with the tube site that you're looking at it on, you can click through to their website very easily. A lot of the time the performers will be listed underneath. That's a good way of knowing that either it's not pirated material, like the people who made it put it up themselves, or the person who pirated it actually cares, which is, I guess, better than the alternative. If there's a performer name attached, click through, find out more about this person, search for them, find their website, find their Twitter, follow them, go to their OnlyFans. That's something that actually came around after I wrote this book, but OnlyFans is basically social media. It's a pay service. A lot of porn stars and people who aren't porn stars have an OnlyFans account where you pay whatever they say per month, and then you get access to material that they make only for their fans. It's really awesome. Follow them, pay them. If you really like what they're making, if you really like what they're doing, help them. And I recognize that not everybody is able to pay for everything that they wish they could. I can't. I don't have like a porn budget. But when and where you can, please pay back into the porn economy if you are a porn consumer. It is really hard out there for them right now. A lot of people still tend to think of the porn industry as this way to make easy money, but it is not like that anymore. So a lot of people are really struggling. And for people who are performers in pornography, and even people who aren't, but more so for the performers, than the lighting guy or the editing guy or whatever, it can be really hard to find a career after porn, unless you're very, very, very careful and find the right people. A lot of people have a hard time transitioning. So if people are not able to pay their bills by making porn, and that's what they want to do and that's what they love doing, transitioning away from that because they can't make enough money is really hard. So please keep that in mind. Okay, all right. I'm now just lecturing and my voice is getting really scratchy because I've been talking for too long. So at any rate, if anyone who's watching has any questions, I'm going to start wrapping this up. I'm going to talk a little bit about some other things that are going on with me. Speaking of paying people, if anybody is interested in hiring me as a writing coach or editor, I do both of these things. You can find out more about that on my website. It's lynseyg.com. There is a whole section about my coaching and editing work. You can also, just scroll through my website. I have had a website for well over 10 years. There's a lot of content on there. You can always poke around. I also publish things that are not nonfiction about porn. I have some comic books out. The second issue of this series pack, which is about vigilante dogs, is coming out in the next probably 2 months. I wrote this and my partner JL Draco illustrated it, and it's beautiful and wonderful, and you should definitely get a copy of pack number 1 and get ready for pack number 2. Tracy Queen is my most proud moment in publishing. This is the first volume of a graphic novel about Tracy Queen, who starts her life as a mafiosa, and then becomes first a webcam star and then sort of a more big deal indie porn star. There is so much going on in this book. It is so much fun. This is her first webcamming show right there. She gets really mad when she gets walked in on afterwards. There's no actual outright nudity in this book. It's not about sex. It's about a person who has sex for a living. But there are a lot of crazy sex toys. This book is also available now. You can get it signed from me if you would like. It is available through oneshipress.com. Oneshi Press is my publishing company who published this book. If you are interested in getting more of my work delivered to you without keeping track of release dates and so on, you can go to patreon.com/oneshipress. We have a subscription service. We actually just launched it as a subscription service, so you can decide what you want to get, how you want to get it in digital or in print, and just subscribe there. One easy monthly payment. You will be helping to support the work that I do and also getting yourself a subscription. So win-win. I'm trying to think what else is going on. Oh, there also may be big deal announcement about watching porn coming up soon, but I can't make it yet because it's not totally set in stone, but I'm really hopeful that it will be soon. I will be back here in 2 weeks, so that is going to be July, crap. I don't know, hang on. July 7th? Yes, July 7th, I will be back here, and at that time, I will read chapter 20 called Porn, Art, and Obscenity. And I will give you a better look at that photo next week. We're going to talk about obscenity and the things that make me uncomfortable in pornography. And yeah, I think that's about it. Adrian says, this was super insightful and informative. Thanks. You're very welcome, Adrian. I really like talking about the adult entertainment industry as an industry. I think that its politics and the way that money moves are really interesting, and it's something that other people just don't geek out about as much as I do, so I'm really glad that anybody would be interested in hearing about all of this. I think that's about it for now. If anybody has any questions that they don't want to ask publicly, you can always DM me afterwards. And you can definitely go on Google and look up things about MindGeek if you want to know more about the corporate Sauron of the porn industry. So that's that for now. I am going to say farewell and go about the rest of my Sunday. So thanks, everybody. Bye.